Welcome back to A People's Guide to Publishing. I'm Joe Biel, the founder and CEO of Microcosm Publishing and Distribution. I'm also the author of A People's Guide to Publishing, which distills what I've learned from selling millions of books over the past 25 years.
I'm Ellie Blue. I'm the editorial and marketing director here at Microcosm. We are an independent mid-list publisher based in Portland, Oregon. We have 14 employees, over 650 titles in print with 20 to 40 new books per year, and we distribute thousands of titles from other publishers.
We started this podcast so that we can share what we've learned with newer publishers so that you can learn from our mistakes.
Or maybe you just want to understand the publishing industry.
This week, we have a pair of special guests on the program. Katie Haegele, author of Kitchen Witch, Cats I've Known, Slip of the Tongue, White Elephants, etc. Many things. And Joe Carlough, owner of This and That Tapes, proprietor of many publications as well. A near infinite battery of creativity.
Publisher of Displaced Snail, right?
Yes, that's me. Yes, and so we're going to discuss their paths as well as what it looks like, what success looks like, I guess, in a creative setting.
Cool. Well, thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, super jazzed.
Thanks for coming on.
So, can you talk a little bit about what put each of you on this path of pursuing writing as a craft?
Sure. And how far back should I go?
As is relevant, you don't need to go back to the prehistoric era, but
Pardon me, that is actually how far back my childhood goes. But yeah, I mean, I've been writing little stories and stuff all my life, ever since I was really small. And I knew I always wanted to be a writer. And so I started out writing for newspapers. That was my idea. That was what I wanted to do for a career. And I did do that for a good few years. But gosh, maybe when I was like 25, I realized it was like not that satisfying for me creatively.
Why not?
I think I wanted to write about my own life, but I didn't know that yet. And I kept sneaking myself into the things.
And I bet your editors love that.
Well, it kind of flies nowadays when you're doing like creative criticism, which is what I was doing, arts criticism. But it didn't satisfy me in the way that I wanted it to. And actually, I can remember a lot of what I was doing was interviewing other artists about their cool projects and poets doing these interesting tours and stuff. And I loved learning about that, but I realized that I wanted to be the one doing the cool thing. Yes. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And so I'd been working on these poems just for fun, I guess. Found poetry. I got really into found poetry. And I did not know how to share that. I wanted to publish them somehow, but I didn't know how to do that. And I didn't know if I could do it because it was like using found material, like previously published material. But I knew what zines were. And I knew there was a zine fest because there'd been a zine fest in Philly 1 year earlier and I'd missed it. So I was like, I'm going to go this next year and I'm going to bring my poems. So I figured out how to make a zine. I had some zines and I took one of them apart. I pulled the staples out of it and took it apart and figured out what the person had done to lay it out. And I made this little poetry book. I was very nervous and showed up with my zine there. And I remember I wrote to this woman whose art I really admired. And and I asked her to do a cover for me. She did it for free. As long as she could put an ad in the back. And I was like, I still have copies of that around. I call it Word Math.
What year was that?
That would have been 2000. Shucks, let's think. 4? Does that sound right? I think that's right. Yeah, it was a while ago now. Right? Maybe it was 2003. Anyway, a long time ago.
Even longer.
Yeah, it might have been like 2002. But yeah, that was the beginning of it. And I went to the Zine Fest. I was very nervous and worried that are people going to be interested in what I'm doing? And I don't know. But I had this really beautiful experience that day, meeting everybody who came around because I didn't know about zines as a culture yet. I just knew that you could publish your work that way. But when I was at this event, I learned that it had a whole culture around it, and that the creators of zines were like, the people reading them were very likely to also be people who made them themselves, or were artists in some other way. So all day long, I was telling people about my work, but they were telling me about theirs.
Oh.
And I made friends that day and found people to like distribute my zine, and that was just the beginning of it. It was like set me on a different path entirely as a writer. And so I've been doing that for all these years, and that's how I met Jay. I was even present, like,
Oh yeah, here I'll tell mine because that leads up to us.
Yes,
Little yin yang.
yes.
So I used to frequent this Tweepop forum called Indie Pages, which was really neat. And a bunch of friends of mine were giving me all these mixed CDs. So I had the idea to make a CD booklet that I could give all of them that contained the track lists. And I found Missy Kulik, who goes by Sugar Cookie when she's making zines, had posted to the indie forums how to make an 8-page zine. And so I made these CD booklets, and this was 2007, and I gave them out to all my friends. And I didn't know it, but I just made my first zine. And then I continued the series. I called it Today Terrific. So I made I think 11 more issues, and I would do like music reviews and interview friends of mine and get art from friends. And then in 2009, my friend Mike Jazworka, who's a comics artist in LA now, invited me to a zine fest. And so I made a bunch of my zines, and I went to it, and I had made these popsicle stick boxes with hinges that opened, and they held the first 5 issues of my zine.
Box set.
Yeah, it was the box set. And I got pipe cleaners and put TT on the front for Today Terrific. And then I met Katie there, and we traded a box set for a book of her poetry. And that's how we got together.
Oh.
And this is my 15 years anniversary.
Congratulations.
So I'm really excited.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
So what happened after that?
What happened with
Like, as
writing?
as a creative pursuit.
Well, I kept on writing for newspapers because I still did that for my work, mostly reviewing books. And I just put out a ton of zines and went to a ton of zine fests and kept doing that. And then I met you all, I guess, right? I did a zine under a pen name that I still haven't revealed that was me. So I'm not going to say what the name was, but it's top secret. No. But I did this zine that I was proud of, and I sent a copy of it to Microcosm to see if you would be interested in carrying it, and you did, and that was like the big time. I was really proud and excited about that. I sold a lot more of those things through you than I had on my own.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, gosh, my memory of dates is poor, but I knew you for a good few years before I did my first book for you, which was White Elephants, which also that started out as a zine series.
Yeah.
And that was a zine that I did every summer for a few years in a row. I was living around the corner from my mom, and we would go to yard sales every summer. And I would come home from each outing and chronicle the things I'd found and the people we met and just the little experiences that we had. And then I turned that into a book by just sort of. This was hard to do, actually. I think making a book is probably always hard, but the challenge of this one was to stitch those things together that I'd written at different times without the goal of combining them and then making it into one narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that was my first book, and then I guess writing those books became my focus. That's been the most important part of my writing life in the last. It's been 10 years. That was 10 years ago.
Wow.
I had to look inside the book to remind myself yesterday at AWP. I was speaking to somebody. This is my first book. It came out 7 or 8 years ago. I don't remember. And let's see. And 2012. Okay.
Oh,
Where's the time go?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's been the most important thing to me in these years is writing these longer pieces, book length writing. Now that once I showed myself I could do it, I wanted to keep doing it.
And why is that important?
Oh, I'm so proud of being able to do that. I'm so proud to have those books. And I think I can see myself doing different kinds of projects in the future, but I think I've hit on something that really suits me, which is writing in a vignette kind of style, but at a book length project. And I just really enjoy doing that.
Well, like that's how Cats I've Known is set up with, short vignettes about different cats. Some of them are longer, some of them just a few paragraphs.
Yes.
You just couldn't.
Right. Yeah, even more than thinking in terms of chapters, I think in terms of like small stories and moments and then like piecing it together. And anyway, like all of those projects have been really gratifying for me to do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What about you? How did it progress from there?
Well, I got a job at an SAT prep company, and I was teaching at first. And then they wanted to start a publishing division, and they knew that I was already making my own books. They had a vending machine in the school with all my zines in it.
Oh, yeah.
So the kids would come in and be like, I just read your poetry. That's so cool.
Not awkward.
No, not at all. But so they hired a design student to come teach me to use InDesign and Illustrator and Photoshop and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
And so, I worked with them for a few years and got better at doing that. And then I started doing freelance work. I picked up clients, I did some book covers, and I would do sort of like on-demand zine making. And so I did maybe 60 of those jobs for poets. I worked with Random House, I worked with Portland State University, Joyful Noise Recordings, a bunch of record labels. I got to work with Deerhoof, which was really cool and like super dreamy for me. And then really it was only just maybe 2 years ago that I sort of stopped doing all of that and just got back to my own work. And so I'm not doing any more freelance. And I'm focusing entirely on, I listen to your podcast. And I've been building my own distribution network. So I have about 20 stores that I stock. I've been doing my personal bookkeeping, and my current tally is a little over 21,000 copies of about 290 zines.
Wow.
So I'm doing a lot of printing.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And you do your printing in your office in this house,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, we have an old publisher was giving away a bunch of old equipment. So I got a folding machine that I use for most of my zines now. We have, a 500 sheet paper cutter when we're making books. I just celebrated the 1-year anniversary with my new printer, an Epson 1660. And I've already done 33,000 prints on it.
You got a new toner ring?
Yes, there's been a lot going on. But, it's something we do together too, because Katie's in my office a lot doing the printing, and we design zines together.
So we paper the 1-year anniversary too.
Oh, you're so right. Aw. I'll have to tell my printer.
Yeah, it probably does.
Give it some paper.
If anyone knows it, knows. So
It has
it'd
a good memory.
be good for you to affirm that you know too.
Yes, right. You're so right. I'm the lackluster one with the relationship at this point.
Oh, and we acquired a photocopier too. A friend of ours had gotten one, like a small one, from a thrift store that had been someone's like small business or something, I think she
Right.
said. And we've made a bunch of zines on that too.
Right, and we house it in. So Katie and I together run the East Fall Zine Reading Room.
Oh yeah, I forgot about this credential.
Which is our zine library and show space. We do a show about once a month when it's non-pandemic times. And we have a library of about 1,600 zines. Almost all of them are cataloged.
We're working on it.
Yeah, you can find the catalog on our website
It's
too.
painstaking. But,
Yeah.
So between you two have like a ton of different aspects of publishing experience, from like self-publishing your own zines to like publishing other people's work to being published traditionally. Like what's your favorite? What lessons would you share with our audience of publishers?
Oh, I think try it all out and see what works for you. I did a zine with you guys, the Blue Suitcase.
Yeah.
Which I meant to be a serial zine, have a lot of issues, but the content in it was very upsetting, and I decided not to work on it anymore. But I really loved having you guys publish one of my zines, but I have a hard time relinquishing a lot of control over a project. And so when it comes down to it, I've been a lot happier doing all of my own design, all of my own printing, establishing my own stores that I sell to. That stuff gives me a lot of pride. But maybe a return to traditional publishing one day in the future.
Random House.
Exactly. Right.
Tomorrow of the world. Yeah, I feel like I'll probably always make zines because just for the sheer like playfulness and openness that you can have when you do it that way. You can be as modest or as big a deal as you want it to be, and that's important to me, and I just enjoy it so much. But working with you all on making books gave me a lot, a whole lot. And I think the most important thing, at least at first, was understanding that it's a collaboration when you work with people like that in that way. Because I was afraid of giving up any control over my work, you know,
Babies.
right. But then I saw what it means to make a book, and it isn't just writing. It's a whole thing, and that it wouldn't have come to be at all or in the way that it was if the people who worked on it together didn't do that. You know.
Packaging is much more, plays a bigger role.
Yeah, well, right. You understand like how it should look and the size it should be and what it should look like on the page, but also like helped me to edit it too, edit the writing, and all of that made it stronger. And like with Kitchen Witch, you know, I had the experience of working with a different editor, with Lydia, and they gave me like really, really. That was a different sort of book for me because it was purely nonfiction, more or less, and. Yeah, like I really benefited from getting that kind of feedback from somebody telling me, this should be reorganized. Things like that. Like what makes this read better? It's sort of like there's the raw materials and then there's the organization.
Right. And then who was your editor on Slip of the Tongue? Did I do it?
It was you.
Okay.
It was you, I think.
And then on Cats I've Known, it was probably Ellie.
It was Ellie.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
got to work
So you've had the gamut.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, and I have really benefited. All those books are like, all of that writing is better than it would have been, you know, if it was just me
Working
banging
with
away.
another is such a luxury.
Oh,
I'm very lucky because Katie is a fantastic editor.
Well,
I know you can't edit your own work.
I'm okay. I'm a pretty good proofreader. I don't know.
No, you're a great editor of my work too. So all of my zines have been way better this past year since I've had you read them all first.
Well, I'm glad.
Give me lots of notes.
I'm glad. I like doing that. Yeah.
So that's it. Yeah, it's an under-credited, you know. It's like design where like nobody would ever be like, very few people would say like my editor really made this a better thing. Like people really frame it.
Well, it's
as
like they only notice if there's a mistake. Otherwise, it's like invisible.
And when editing and design are done well, you don't notice them at all.
Right.
Like you want it to be a seamless thing.
Right.
Totally.
No, I've rewritten entire essays because of Katie's notes, and then they've been so much stronger.
Yeah. Just a second, another pair of eyes is worth so much. A good reader that you trust, and he can be honest with you. Yeah.
And like bad editing, you can feel the war between the author and the editor in the text when you read it.
I bet. I haven't really experienced that.
No? Okay.
Once you start reading books with that in mind, you can't not see it.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
So like, how so?
Oh, like sometimes you can see like exactly what happened. Like you can be like, oh, this author turned their draft in too late and didn't get like the first round of edits it needed, or the second or third round of edits it needed, or
and you can even tell down to that level. Like that's so interesting.
That's interesting.
Or you can just see like where the editor is leaning in harder and where the author is leaning in harder a lot of the time. And you can really distinguish because it's like almost like two voices.
Two different voices.
Oh, right. Word.
That can come up with magazine or newspaper writing, especially with magazines, because those tend to have they need, the bigger the magazine, they need to have like a unified voice.
Yeah.
So if you don't figure out what that voice is and write in that style, they'll just change it.
Yeah.
Which is why I don't like doing that.
It's true. It's less of a collaboration where they're like
right. It works better for me when there's like when the writer has more say, not total say, but you know, it needs to be collaborative for me to want to do it. Yeah.
Right.
So when most people think about self-publishing nowadays, they think about like kind of the solo work of like creating a book and then like maybe creating this book-shaped object out of it and putting it on Amazon and hoping people will find it. And I feel like what, like listening to you two talk about sort of your own publishing work that is outside the mainstream, but also like not that. It I guess the question in this is like, what makes the way that you publish special and cool? Like, what are the coolest things about the independent publishing scene, like from your view, that people can tap into?
There's so many cool things. Well, one thing that came to mind right away is because you used the word solo, I think, is that it can be so collaborative, right? Like Joe and I work on things together, but we also both have lots of friends and just like friendly collaborator people we've met at events, we've met as pen pals or online, and that's so much fun.
You know, it's a great example of that is we worked on this project called Out and About. Joe and Katie walk around Philly.
Yes.
And it was 2020, you know, quarantine was in full swing and we were just walking everywhere all the time. And we were going to make a zine of it and release it at our friend's store. But we decided, we did a Kickstarter for it and raised a lot more money than we expected. And we decided to make a book out of it. And I had just reconnected with my friend, Ali Shwed, who's a comics artist. And she was going to do the cover.
And she was a high school friend, right?
Right. She's an old high school friend, but we met each other at SPX again and started talking. But so I had just taken screenshots of the maps that we'd walked and like drawn a little walkway. And we told her what we wanted for the cover. And she goes, let me draw the maps too. And we were like, oh, okay, that'd be great. And then she goes, I'm also just going to draw things like shoes and gates and lamps.
And design each page.
Right. And then she goes, would you want like a border for each page? And it was like, these are things that we weren't thinking of. Because in our minds, this was going to be, a little 20-page zine that we were going to sell. But Allie has made a lot of books and she runs Little Red Bird Press. And so, she in her mind, she had what a book should look like. And it just, all of those things really elevated what Out and About could be.
And it's such a cool book. Like you open it up and it doesn't look like a guidebook. It looks like a zine.
Oh,
I love that about it.
Yeah.
And it's like, as a cartoonist, she would have a different aesthetic. So like you're collaborating on that.
Yes, totally. Yes.
And as a publisher, she has an aesthetic.
Yeah, totally. And her style is so charming and lovely. And like, I know that people are drawn to the book in large part because of how attractive it is.
Right.
Yeah.
People love attractive books.
Yeah. It's really
and that one we outsourced. We used Fireball Printing here in Philly because sometimes when designing something, I like to have constraints. And the biggest book they can print is 100 pages. So we were like, all right, how can we make this book fit into 100 pages? And sure enough, it was 100 pages to the page.
Nice. Okay. So how has experiences like this informed what you want to do next?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. Well, one thing that comes to mind is when we did that book, like Joe was saying, we used Kickstarter, and that was my first experience with Kickstarter, and I really got a lot out of it. I was so pleased with how that went that I did my own Kickstarter last year because I had the idea to do like a zine subscription because I wanted to write a zine and send it out each week. And so I did that. So I like made my own campaign and Joe helped me. We made video and stuff. Trying to make it look snazzy. But I got some subscribers to this thing and got so much out of doing that project. I did it for 6 months every week. I'm taking a small break from it because I had to dig pretty deep, but it was a lot of writing. But I plan to do it again. So I'll do the same thing again soon, I think, and use Kickstarter again.
What do you think your next book will be? I'm putting you on the spot here.
Well, it would be on the spot if I had an answer, but I don't know. I actually don't know. I'm just sort of like, I don't tend to plan like that much. I just like keep on writing and then see what direction I go in with it. I've really doing that subscription was like, I wrote some essays for that I'm proud of, and maybe I would do something with those sometime. But I don't know. I don't have a plan for a book.
Give it time.
Yeah, it'll come. It'll happen. Just not yet.
I have finally learned to collaborate and give up a little control.
Ooh.
So, you know, this past year has been marked by collaboration. So my friend Gina Brandolino and I started writing a zine called Gina and Joe Talk About. We talk about horror movies. We did queer horror, Halloween horror, and winter horrors. I have a project coming up with Luce Tomlin Brenner, who does the It's Always Halloween podcast. We're going to do a bunch of Halloween themed zines together.
Nice.
And, you know, these are all people who have strong aesthetics too, and, you know, want to talk about what the zine looks like, want to talk about who should do the cover, if not me, and things like that. And I'm getting better at learning to cede some control and say, like, you know, that's a really good idea. I didn't think of it, but it's a really good idea.
I can admit.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I mean, that's like our job too, is, you know, you come in and you're like, oh, is the author and illustrator, is the, like, what is,
Right.
You know, because it's like, it starts out as like, what do the other books on the shelf look like? Then it comes back to like, what is the organic expression of this book?
Interesting.
You know,
Yeah,
because
that
it's
is
like,
interesting.
you don't want it to be,
Like force.
you don't want it to, yeah, you don't like want it to have, if it has too much personality, then people are going to be like, what the hell is this? And if it has too little personality, then it feels homogenized and soulless.
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting.
And so you want, like, you're like amalgamating those two elements.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, right.
Like let it happen naturally, but sort of steer it, and
Like, you know, you research and then you ask some questions, which I guess is research as well.
Yeah, right, of course.
Do you worry that are you feeling a little boxed in by being typecast as a horror writer?
No, not at all. It's there are a few things that I like truly unequivocally love. I love horror movies. I love a whole bunch of video games. I love my zines. And I don't feel the need to like stop myself from loving those things. So there have been times when I've said, like, you know, this is who I am now. Like, you know, I run this tape label, This and That Tapes. And for a few years, I got really lost in it. And I stopped making zines and I was just doing the tapes. And I was like, this is who I am now. I'm the record label executive. But, you know, then I sort of woke up one moment and I was like, what is my life anymore? This isn't sort of what I do. So I'm still enjoying running it. But the horror movies, I love them. So I'm happy to just keep writing about them.
Right. Yeah. This is a common problem where you are like, does the project work for me? Do I work for the project?
Yeah.
You know.
Can we talk about business and money for a minute? Because
Sure.
when we first showed up, you told us you've been taking business classes and applying that to the zine. And I feel like one of the common misconceptions in publishing is that, like, in order to be good at business, you kind of have to be soulless, and that, like,
Which is true.
yeah, and also I feel like there is this element, like, you know, when I first got involved in zine culture, everyone I met, it was incredibly collaborative, and then as I sort of started to like expand beyond zine culture, people started to be a little bit like, what are you going to pay me? Which, you know, I feel like is valid. Everyone should get paid for their work if what they're doing is work rather than a hobby, or if somebody's getting paid, everybody should, you know.
Right.
But like, I guess, how do you navigate that? How do you like put your like business mindset into this work without losing the soul of it?
Oh, that's interesting.
Just some hard balls.
The biggest thing that I learned from it, I think, was the fact that there are people who want to support you, and you shouldn't make it hard for them to do that. And so that was something I was doing. You know, I was trying to sell my zines for $1 or $2, whereas at the end of the day, I wasn't making any money, and I was believing that no one would want my work if I sold it for more than that. But, you know, now my zines are usually between $3 and $8, depending on how big they are. And, you know, if anything, more people are buying them.
Oh, interesting.
But it's, you know, it's a thing where, you know, we're getting the good reviews and people are saying, like, you know, I love this press. I want to buy their zines. And so you shouldn't stop people from doing that. You know, the same thing with the mailing list. I had this idea that having a mailing list was in some way like a corny thing to do, or like, you know, oh, that's like some business. I'm not like Urban Outfitters. But, you know, how else are people going to hear from me? Right. And so, you know, I have a mailing list now, and, you know, a few hundred people signed up to it because they follow my work. And it, you know, again, I was making it harder for people to find my work because of some idea that I had that was poorly formed in the first place.
Huh. Yeah.
What about you?
Mm.
Not to say that you're also going to business school, but
I am not doing that, and I don't have a real head for business.
but to say, like, how do you balance those two seeming, or supposedly adversarial ideas?
I think for me, it's only been adversarial in the sense that, like, psychologically, early on, it was very hard for me to. I guess it's something similar to what Joe was saying. Very hard for me to promote myself and feel comfortable doing that. Just to, like, talk about, I have this book, or I'm so proud of those things, but I kind of hoped people would just sort of happen upon them, and they do sometimes. But
Right.
I
mean, your first book was sold in Barnes and Noble.
I know.
Your very first book.
and I don't think that I didn't, like, tell all my family about that and feel very proud of it, but it was sort of like, I think I've tended in the past to, like, be delighted if something like that happened for me, but not know that it was okay to want it, or even just to be proud to tell people, like, I have a thing. If you're interested in it, here's how you can get it. Please consider supporting me and my work. And, like, just like Joe was saying, people do. Like yesterday when I was at the booth at AWP, like, I was proud to stand there with my books, and I met a whole lot of people who were interested in them and interested in what Microcosm was doing, and that's where I had these real connections with people, and I think that's part of it too. I don't feel like I need to think of it as marketing. Like, if I don't understand what that is, or I don't like it, then that's fine. But what I do know how to do is have conversations with people, so that's what I did. Because when I'm sitting there with my books that tend to be, like, pretty personal and tender.
Yeah.
So when I tell people what they are, then those people kind of immediately get real and talk to me about their lives, and then we're,
you're there.
Yeah, we're having, like, a real human exchange, and that's the point of writing the thing in the first place. That's why I write it. It's certainly why I publish it, because I'm trying to make that connection. So, like, talking about what I've done to somebody who might be interested in it is just an extension of that, and it isn't sleazy.
Right.
So, and I understand that now, and so I'm, like, happy to do it.
There's also sort of a head trip for me of, like, when is something no longer a hobby, and when is it something I'm trying to do? Because one thing I took from the business classes too is about building a budget and sticking to the budget and keeping actual track of cash flow in and out. And so it's like, we did 2 full print runs of Out and About, 250 books each. We sold all 500, but we probably only made a few $100. And for 500 books, and for almost a year and a half of selling them, so the third print run, we increased the price by a little bit, and we decreased the page numbers by a little bit by tightening up the design. And so now we have the opportunity to make more than we made with the first 2 runs in this one single 250 run. And it's not because all I want is money, but it's because, for a project that we're doing for years, it would be really nice if it gave us some money.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and then it becomes, like, self-sustaining.
Right. But when you're thinking of it more as a hobby, it's easy to say, well, this is just for fun. And to not think about the fact that I'm spending 5, 10, 20 hours a week working on this and making no money from it. But this is, like, where almost all of my time is going. Right. What if I want to build my life around this?
Yeah. And that idea of a hobby can be a crutch too, and just a way of, like, not giving yourself the respect due. I'm not the biggest fan even of that concept. Like, work is work.
Yeah.
It's something that you care about is something that you care about. Whether you get paid anything or a lot, or, so if you care about it and you worked on it, then it's okay to stand by that.
I feel like that's an awesome note to end on.
Well, join us next week where we talk about something else.
Thanks for joining us once again.
Please send your questions to podcast@microcosmpublishing.com so we can answer them on future episodes.
And please give us 5 stars on iTunes and everywhere else that podcasts are reviewed.
You can find us on the internet at microcosm.pub.
On Twitter at Microcosm.
On Facebook at Microcosm Publishing.
On Instagram at Microcosm_pub.
And here in Portland, Oregon on North Williams Avenue.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful week.